Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for putting up with all of our ridiculous artists and shenanigans.
I tattooed before though, like you've been a tattoo artist before?
I did tattoo. I ended up going through a series of seizures based on actually being like medically overdosed on an antidepressant medication, and I was originally left-handed. So after a series of like they were like mini seizures, but basically it was due to something called serotonin syndrome, and what it did was it fucked with all of the muscles in my tattooing hand, which now I can't use properly. So I've been strengthening up the right hand and like kind of teaching myself how to write again, and like it's been 8 years since it happened, so I think I might actually have the strength now to like go back into tattooing. But it's going to basically be from ground zero, like, because I never tattooed with my right hand. So it's going to be interesting to try and figure out how to tattoo with.
Like even just writing with different hands is a whole different.
It's been interesting for sure, but it's coming back. I can actually write nicely now, and it's starting to actually get like strong enough that like you can read what I'm writing, which is lovely. Whereas prior to this, it was very much like, ooh, look, chicken scratch. Try and translate it.
I didn't know that. You never know what's going on in people's lives.
Well, it ended up being kind of like a blessing in the sense that I was never that exceptional at tattooing. I didn't tattoo for very long. It was a few months. But basically, like, what I was doing at that time, like, what I wanted to do artistically, and, like, the style I was, like, learning wasn't anything that was, like, what I would want to do now. So there was a good chance that I would have done it, and, like, nothing exceptional would have ever happened. I probably would have coasted along and kind of been, like, a mediocre, decent tattoo artist, and then, you know, that would have been my life. But because of this, and because I had to find a way of being in the industry, because like I loved the industry as much as I did, I had to find another way to be part of it. And so that kind of came in like shop management, and then like eventually owning a shop, and you know, then doing all of the other things that came with, you know, owning a shop and running a shop, and like the promotion of a shop, which ended up being something I excelled at, and you know, thus building the brands and building all of the different things we do, and you know, now owning the largest tattoo shop in Canada. So it definitely wasn't ideal at the time, and it was something that was like devastating, but because of that devastation and because of that like ability to like not want to like just say, you know, I'm gonna walk away and like I can't tattoo, I'm done, whatever, it ended up actually being like the best thing that could have happened. And I certainly wouldn't change it now. So it sucked at the time, but it definitely ended up being something that worked out better in the long run for me.
And on top of that, you're a mother as well. You fit that all in one day.
Yeah, somehow. We've got 2 kids. The shop. We have the YouTube project now, which is covered. And we have all the different tattoo conventions that we're doing this year and next year. And then I still write for a bunch of different tattoo magazines and blogs, and then I still manage a bunch of different tattoo artists, like social medias and stuff.
So I noticed that you have your whole arm black, tattooed black. I've noticed that style coming out.
This is a cover-up.
Oh, that's a cover-up?
This is completely a cover-up. So, I had a full sleeve.
Oh, you had a full sleeve. So it's more of a cover-up concept? I mean, you just do your whole arm
this was
black?
before I had a laser. But it was basically like I've never actually had like bad tattoos. I've always been tattooed by good artists, but I got tattooed, I started when I was 15, and I got tattooed extremely heavily, extremely fast. So like most of the tattoos I have on my body that aren't being covered, or that are being covered now, I got between the ages of 15 and 18. So I was about 120 hours in 3 years. Like, it was a ridiculous amount of tattoo time in a very short period, and what that ended up with is not necessarily bad tattoos, but tattoos that I didn't necessarily think about. And I now really like the look of big cohesive bodysuits and big pieces, where I had like, this arm's a perfect example, I have like a half sleeve, and then I have this tattoo, and I have this tattoo, and then I have like, you know, a little like angry crab, and then like it's just like a whole pile of like random shit scattered everywhere that has no thought involved. And so this was my way of doing a big piece. Like I really like black. I really like big black work pieces, so like this was a perfect example, or a perfect like mesh of like I have to cover something, it ends up looking really cool, and I like it because it's one big cohesive piece, and now we're basically kind of doing the rest of my body to kind of have like a cohesive bodysuit feel with a lot of black work. But now that I have the laser, there's a lot of stuff that's being lasered. So like my knuckles being lasered, my whole back's being lasered. I think a good chunk of this leg's being lasered, especially because we have so many good guest artists coming in. I'm like, oh, how many were left good? Like I got shitty spots, like the knee ditches and like my kneecaps. And I'm like, I don't want to do those spots. I'd rather laser like good spots.
Yeah, that laser concept was a big hit, or is it? No, it is a big hit.
Yes.
It was in the Hamilton newspaper. It was in the newspaper.
Was everywhere.
It was everywhere. Yeah. But I mean, for me, that's amazing that you're giving people that option. Before that option was not. It's like you had it and you're done.
The thing is, like, with the invention of laser, it's been around for a very long time, but to buy a laser, it's extremely expensive. So a good laser, like the one we have, is $179,000 Canadian. So, a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a house. Like, that's a lot of money that most people can't throw at, you know, a laser. And we're in a position where we make enough that, like, it was financially logical for us to be able to purchase something at that price tag. So most of the people who can purchase these lasers are doctors, professionals, people who make an excessive amount of money, but they don't necessarily respect tattooing, they don't know much about tattooing. And then there's a bunch of shops that do offer laser, but they typically offer like a lower quality laser, something that's, you know, not able to hit all of the same wavelength, they're not able to get all the colors, they're not able to like accurately pinpoint and target the particles in the skin the same way as ours can. And then you get into like the whole crazy science side of it, and like different wavelengths and different, you know, depths, and like what metals are in the inks and what metals aren't in the inks, and like how you target it and how fast, and like there's a whole science to it that you have to really invest time into learning in order to accurately do it. It's not just like pew 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 shooting lasers, which everybody thinks it is. But it isn't actually that expensive to run the machine. It's actually quite inexpensive to actually run the machine, and like there's nothing else to it basically. Like you don't have to have setups, you don't have to have massive supplies, it doesn't cost a fuck ton in inks. It takes a few seconds. Like you can do multiple removals in a few minutes. Once the machine's on and it's heated up, you can just continuously like client out the door. You have to clean up between clients, but it's not bloodborne pathogens, it's, you know, gloves and surface barriers and some cavicide and like minor things, but it isn't like, you know, I have to tear down a whole tattoo setup, I have to take these needles out, I have to throw them in the sharps container. There's not like a 15-minute tear down period. It's like a 5-minute, like here, let me wipe some stuff down, put something else out, and the next client.
So you have the machine and it's boom. Well,
so the biggest investment is the machine. So why more companies don't dump the prices down, and why more companies don't offer it free in certain situations, I don't know. But I think the reason being is because everybody who has these lasers has a larger amount of money, no one is being able to come in and compete with them and say like, I'm going to compete on pricing.
It's monopoly.
So and the minute somebody comes in and has the option of being able to say, you know what, this is ridiculous pricing, like 1,000% markups at least, I'm like, there's no reason for that. So we dumped it down to, I mean, ours we still make a good profit on, but it is like half or more than like what the other places are charging, but we're still making good money. And you know, we're beating everybody else around us. So it has definitely brought the market to more people, because now everybody can really afford this rather than like the select few. And like everybody can afford shitty tattoos. So I feel like everybody who can afford shitty tattoos should be able to afford you know, good laser treatment, not laser treatment that's gonna leave them with weird scars and like only get half the tattoo and then they have like a weird bubbly gross mess.
Oh.
So I mean, I feel like that might be worse than the bad tattoo in the first place.